Hello, welcome you all to Team 2. Today is the fifth meetup of Team 2. What is Team 2? We all know communication and leadership are the key skills for job in the corporate world. The objective of Team 2 is to promote communication, collaboration, public speaking, social and leadership skills. The core group members are in 17 to 30 years age group, those who are doing their colleges or those who finished their studies and started working. Why Team 2? Through Team 2, we are connecting new generations. Team 2 is for collaboration. There are lots of experience within the group itself for higher studies or jobs. You can get guidance. People within the community can help each other. Team 2 is for communication. We have a planned approach for communication and skill development with projects. Team 2 is for leadership. We are interacting with leaders as guest speakers to our sessions and provide a chance for discussing with them. So set aside an hour every weekend for self-development. Please ensure your participation till end of the meetup. In case Zoom disconnects, please rejoin the same link. Today we have 4 speakers and let me call Dia to introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Hi all, I'm Dia. I'll be introducing our first guest speaker, Mr. Benoy Jacob. He did his master's in Cochin University of Science and Technology. He also worked as a scientist in DRDO, Bangalore. Later, he worked in Honeywell Automation as a senior director for more than 20 years. He's going to give us a speech on user-centered design of products. We are honored to have you here with us, sir. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dia. It's actually Benoy Joseph, not Jacob, but that's fine.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, Ashraf, can you share the screen?
Sir.
Yeah, you able to see the screen or?
Yeah. We are able to see. So, hello everyone. Till he brings up, let's just probably talk about user-centered design. And I'm not sure how many of you know this. Maybe some of you know this more than me. I am not an expert in this, but I have handled a team at Honeywell who does this work. So when Ashraf talked to me about something connected with technical, I thought this is a good topic to present to you all. One of the my suggestions would be for you to follow up after this discussion, because in 15 or 20 minutes, I cannot cover the whole breadth of user-centric design, nor I'm equipped to cover from a studies perspective. But I do know the basics and why it is important to all of us. Some of you who find it interesting, and I encourage all of you to find it interesting, because from an engineering perspective, a product design perspective, this has become very important from the last 10 years, actually. So whoever is doing design of a product, or even say a computer screen, a UI screen, it's important for them to understand the significance of this and how it's done. And from a company's perspective, initially, they may be a little skeptical about the process, but I'll explain why all this, but it is important from a company's perspective as well. So without too much discussion, let's jump into what it is. I will be covering what it is in a high level. Of course, what is user-centric. I actually, when Ashraf told me to prepare some slides, I picked this from a website that I have provided in the first page, some of the points. There is, when you're interested, or if you're interested, you can actually go to multiple YouTube videos and even websites that you can understand more about this. Of course, there are courses in colleges now that are being taught on this, but about 5 or 6 years ago, or even maybe 7 years ago, this was not a topic that was taught as a science, okay, from an engineering perspective. So as I said, it's gaining importance. So please at least read about it. You should know about it. And those who are interested, as I said, go deep into this. So this, the user-centric design is actually an iterative process. I hope you understand what iterative means. It's not a one-step process and where you define the product and then come out of it. It has to be multiple loops of discussions involving the users, marketing folks, the product design team. So a lot of stakeholders involved in doing this. And once you do this, and I will explain a high level 4 stages of doing this, but once you do this, it does not end there. You have to go back to this stage 1, because there will be a lot of things that you have missed as a designer, a lot of things the user has missed telling you how what they want, a lot of things that from a design perspective does not make sense. So there are various stages where the design flaws has to be corrected. So you have to understand it does not just end with one stage process. Then who all does it involve? It involves a lot of people. Actually, the primary focus is the user. The name itself is user-centric design. The multiple companies may call it by different names. Okay, so but the fundamental premise is that you do involve the user in defining the product that they are going to use. It's not just the user. You have to also focus on their environment, the environment that it is being used. I will explain with some examples what the tasks that they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and the environment that they're going to do it. So all this should be the focus of your design. No, Ashraf, go back. Yeah. All that has to be the focus. All right. So how do you involve the users? There are, of course, various techniques, various theories, and various processes by which you can involve them. I will explain a little high level in the next slide, but you have to understand it's both art and science. What do I mean by that? Because science is measurable, art is not. Art is a lot of things that you have to do, understand aesthetics of the product, how a user likes. See, multiple users have multiple point of views on how a product should look like. If you ask me, I might like a particular color in a product. Someone else might like a different product. But how do you unify all these requirements and say you bring a product that is satisfying to all the users? Is what is art all about? And science, of course, you're all engineers, so you know what science means. There is a predefined mathematics and physics to that. So it has to be measurable and all those things. So that's what it involves, really. As I said, there is variety of techniques how you go ahead and talk to the various stakeholders in this, the users. I've listed a few in the next slide, but there are many that you can use. There are very different design houses that teach multiple techniques to arrive at this. So it's all very important that you realize there are various techniques involved, and how you use them is also important. And for what? What do we do all this for? To create a product that is simple. It has to be simple. You cannot complicate the product, because customers or the users will hate products that are complicated. Imagine yourself to be in a situation where you're using a TV, for example. You have to refer multiple user manuals and brochures to understand how a TV operates. Is not something that you would like, right? So it has to have very simple UIs and it has to be very what you call you just have to look at it and say, oh, this is how it works. That kind of simplicity should be there. It has to be usable, of course. Any product which is not usable goes without saying that it will not be used, right? What is accessible? Some of the products that the company's design goes into places that you cannot imagine. So the company would have designed it to be used in a very, say, home-like environment, whereas the customers use it in a very very cold places. So those products have to be maintained. Those products have to be accessed and upgraded. So how do you use that? So these are all things that come into play when you have to design the product. And a customer would say, I need, for example, a temperature sensor that works from minus 60 degrees to say 100 degrees centigrade. That's a very simple definition, right? But how does he use the product? How does he access the product after he builds it? How does he maintain it? How does he change it? How does he upgrade it? All those questions come into play as a user design engineer or user design process. Let's go to the next slide and then talk about some of the high level tools that I will familiarize you with. Not in deep, but as a high level, as I said. So brainstorming with customers or the users is very important. At first, when you start the requirements gathering or talking to customers, you have to sit with them personally is best over the phone, or it doesn't work very well, but go to the customer's place. You have to be in the customer's environment, because there are subtle things that the customers miss or the user misses while telling you. Okay, so you have to you have to be there and then understand how the customer is going to use the product, and you have to have a few of them who are going to use the product around you to discuss and discuss ideas, discuss problems, discuss challenges that they're currently facing without the product, and what they will be facing with the product, right? Then you have to storyboard. You have to make say prototypes. You have to show them how the product looks like. If it's a new product, a customer may not understand the whole concept at all, right? If he has been using a, for example, a phone, he has been using it, so he knows at a very high level what the phone functionality is. But if it's a new, extremely new product, you have to show him how the product looks like and what problem it is going to solve for him. There has to be drawings, there has to be PowerPoint presentations with the customer that you work, and all this he has to see. I mean, not all customers are educated. You will be surprised. So I have been to plants, and you would think that there are engineers sitting in and running the plant, right? Wrong. That's not correct. There are people who have barely passed 10 who will be sitting in a control room and controlling the process, which is very mission critical. Some of the processes, the process plans, if there's a mistake, catastrophe can happen, right? You would have heard, I don't know if somebody follows news. Recently, there was a fire at, I think, one of the places in India, one of the, I think it was Reliance or something, not sure which company, but there was a fire, and a few people lives have been lost. And there was a Fukushima, for example, there was an earthquake that the total plant catastrophe happened, right? So all these things can happen once the control room engineers make a mistake. They're called engineers, but they're not. There are engineers supervising them, but they are hardly in the plant. They'll be on travel. They'll be defining new requirements, things like that. But those who are continuously 24/7 in the plant are people who are not engineers. So it has to be very easy for them, very simple for them, they understandable for them. All right, I'll stop here a minute and then look for any questions or any comments. Okay, if none, then let me go to the next. What are the steps involved at a high level in the user-centric design? No, the same page. Thanks. So the high level is like you'll have to understand, as I said, the environment or context of use of the product. I will explain some products, or rather I will give some examples of some products in the last slide, where the context of how the product is going to be used is important. I will give you one right now so that you understand what I'm saying by context. So there was a sensor, there's a fire sensor, right? You know where fire sensors are located in a house, right? I'm sure some of you have seen it, or if not, if you go to a big building, you can look for it. Actually, there will be a round sensor on the top, on the roof side, on the, if it's a false ceiling, you can find that, and there'll be red lights on that sensor, right? So that is installed on the top of the roof, right? So if it's on the wall, you can easily screw it in, but if it's on the top, you can imagine there is some challenge for the technician or the fitter who fits that sensor, right? So now you're putting the screws in and tightening it, and the screw falls down. So it's about 12 feet height. So he has to use a ladder. The technician goes up the ladder, tries to screw it in. The screw falls down, and he has to come back down, pick up the screw, and then go back up and tighten it, right? So how, if you design the product in such a way that the screw falls off in case he misses that groove, it's a bad design, right? So you have to understand it has to be, put upright, and the screw should not fall down. So that's the context, what I mean by the context of use of the product. The other context could be the temperature sensor I gave you, which operates in extreme temperatures, minus 60 degrees centigrade. The customer has to go outside and then replace it if there is a failure, or they have to go to maintain it. So how do you make that easy for that user? Then you sit and do all those brainstorming activities, storyboarding, prototype sketches, and then come up with an initial requirement stage, requirements for the user. Then you have a brainstorm again, and all along, the user is part of the design process as well. Requirement process, context process, and even testing the design is the user is involved. So you find various approaches to the problem, and then bring an initial. It's not a product, by the way. It's just multiple, say, prototypes, or even, as I said, sketches, or uh, some kind of initial presentations. Then you test the design. You ask the customers to test it, and there are various techniques that you watch the customer and find it how easy or difficult it is for the customer. I'll give you an example of how you can, when you use Google or any of these search sites. Imagine yourself, you're sitting in the other room, and I'm using the search engine. How easy or hard is it for me to go and find a search that I'm actually looking for? How many clicks I have to click on that screen to get to where I want to go, or just go to say any railway booking site, for example. Sometimes you find some of the sites very frustrating, right? It's not the keys are not where you expect it to be. The switches, or maybe the choices are not what you expect it to be. So those are all frustrating designs, which the use or the designer has not worked with the user, and what all options has to be given to the user. So test it, and so one approach is you actually put the user in a glass room and observe the user from outside the glass and see how many clicks he's using to get to that site. So that's one benchmark. There are various test tools right now, actually, that you may adopt. So this is one. Okay, you test the design, and then you have finished one step of the process. Then you go back again, iterate on and go to the next stage. Again, go to the context of use, the requirements, design approaches, test the design. You may have to do it multiple iterative cycles, 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how complex the product is, and how much inputs you have got. It's all a factor of that. And the design team have to involve artists, mechanical engineers, UI engineers, ethnographers, ergonomists. Because I'll give you another example of a product that we designed at Honeywell, where a user is actually interacting with HMI. Okay, it's a display screen, and the initial thought was to actually build the display where a customer is sitting, and the customer is somebody is assuming the customer is 6 feet tall, because that is the standard height of European and US engineers. But if the same product were sold to a place like, say, Japan, or say Southeast Asia, the average height is not it's not 6 feet, right? So the sitting on that chairs is very discomfortable for those engineers. So you need people from ergonomics to actually study that and then tell you this is not a product that you would want to sell in Japan, for example. So those are typical insights that you have to draw, and the typical people that you would use for designing a product. This list is maybe huge. Okay, it depends on the product, the complexity of the product. Based on that, the list can be enhanced. All right, going to the next slide. Okay, some of the business challenges or questions. Of course, all of this is cost, right? Anyone you involved in the product that is outside of the initially budgeted cost, the business project manager or the product manager or even the marketing folks, they say the cost of the product in developing in R&D is very high. Is it justified? So those are the typical questions you would encounter while using all these techniques. Yes, it is justified. There are a lot of benefits. In fact, the product will be, of course, customers will buy it because the product is pleasing to look at, easy to use, simple, accessible, and it is usable. That's the number one thing that they would like, right? And once you build the product, decreased customer services or cost of servicing the product, because errors are less likely to be there because you have involved the user itself in defining the product. What typically happens in an engineering field is when you bring out a product, right? Customers are very skeptical to use it. They find it, they say, oh, this is not needed. I had an earlier one. I don't need this product. But this will help in early adoption because you have involved that person in defining the product. So there's a lot of acceptance and a lot of reduced training time for the users. once you have defined this, you have less error and products will be safe to use, because there are warning signals if the product is, say, hazardous, for example, in certain environments, right? And as I said, empathy and sense of ownership from the user increases, and quality of life definitely increases. Sustainable products, once you build these products using these methodologies, using these techniques, these products can be maintained easily, and the product can be rolled over to a new product very easily if at all it is required. And more importantly, from a business standpoint, the understanding this human, the needs, or the how the customer uses it in his environment and challenges that the customer faces, you may bring out new products. You may have ideas for new products for the user, and that is actually more business and good business for the company, right? You may bring out products that ease life for a customer. If this product is not able to do it, there may be some products that you may be able to think about, innovate, and bring out for the user. Next slide, Ashraf. Okay, some examples. I told you about the fire sensors that you usually fix on the roof, how difficult it is to actually tighten the screws if the screws were to fall down. But you could actually design the screw in such a way that the screw has a holding material so that the screw doesn't fall off. The other example is thermostats. Honeywell used to have, I once upon a time was the leading thermostat maker actually in the world, but maybe did not focus as much as it should have on these thermostats and the design of the thermostats. One of the interesting stories was when the chairman went into one of the hotels in US, and he saw a thermostat there. He was actually zapped, and comparing it with Honeywell thermostats, he was actually very angry why Honeywell did not design a thermostat as beautiful as that one he saw. That one was from Nest, and in fact, there were huge user-centric teams that was formed at Honeywell because the chairman realized how the potential of the thermostats business was actually increased by just the chairman seeing this at a hotel where he was using it, and then how easy and simple and beautiful it was to use. He said Honeywell should build products in the future with these kind of things in mind. The story of iPhone is actually legendary, right? You know how iPhone was built and what all user-centric features went into making the iPhone. So all this you guys are familiar, and the importance of how this user-centric design is in making and defining the product, and in fact defining the company as well. iPhone defined Apple, for instance. Most of probably India has not heard about Apple before iPhone. So that's what the potential of these things and adoption of that. Actually, there was no need for a phone like iPhone before it was created, right? I mean, nobody realized it, but the engineers lived with the users, with the community, and found out there are things that customers could use, and they could actually evolve new uses for the product. I also talked about the HMI display that Honeywell built, that we helped build, which in fact, with all these designs, Japanese customers had visited the place and they loved this product because, and exactly this was the reason they stated in their feedback, that typically they found displays to be higher and their feet wouldn't touch the ground. Whereas this display, actually, they could actually land their feet on the ground. And from an ergonomics perspective, if anybody understands ergonomics, it is important while you sit to have your feet on the ground. Otherwise, you would have sores and pains and even diseases that could actually stem out from that. I think I'm done with my presentation. If anyone has questions, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, I can take any questions. And I hope I have introduced you to some concepts and some importance of this user-centric design. And if I have, then I've been successful. If not, sorry, that's all I can say. Any questions, guys?
Okay, so this is a little bit highly engineering. I know we had, I think, some engineering people in here. So, do they have any questions? Maybe Adil.
Yeah, no question, Ashraf, but it's eye opener for me. So it's built interest for me to look into this subject more. Surely I will look into this subject more, so I can use in my day-to-day life, and it will be useful for us to while designing new product or a new product. So these are mandatory skills, but we left as a hidden one. So we need to focus on this skill. It's eye opener really for me.
Yeah, and what I've touched is not at the tip of the iceberg. Also, okay, it's very high level. And as I said, I have not learned this as a science, but I have actually handled a team that does this. So I know the challenges that they face, the importance of this science. So I encourage all the engineers who are going to be even computer science, even product engineering, mechanical, to understand it, and then some of you can take it up either part time or full time to because it's important, and it is going to get even more important as you go forward.
Okay, so yeah, so thank you, Benoy. So it was very
Sure. It
knowledgeable.
was a pleasure, and as usual, comments, criticisms are welcome. Send it to Ashraf, and Ashraf will send it to me. Thanks for the last feedback that all of you have given. As a result, I have prepared some slides this time.
Sure. And one more thing, actually, we have this 40